And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Survivor podcast. Me and Ryan back here to recap the merge episode of Survivor Season 43, Episode 6. We've made it to the merge. I guess you want to consider it a 12-person merge since it was earn your way into the merge. But for 13 people to be vying for a spot at the merge was certainly a lot. But I have to say it did not disappoint. I really like the episode, and I'm excited to talk about it tonight. How are you doing, Ryan?
Dylan, it's like Xander coined a few seasons ago. It's Mergatory. People were using that phrase once again. It's purgatory between the merge and the pre-merge. It's this new weird one-vote event. But no, I thought it was a great episode. We were talking offline. Probably my favorite episode of the season. The second best one would be maybe the Lindsay vote from a few weeks ago, where that was a complete blindside to her and to the viewers. But no, I thought this was the best episode of the season because you had a lot of drama within the Baka tribe that I can't wait to go over. You had some advantages being hinted at. People are now trying to figure out where the pieces lie on the board. We thought we were going to see a Baka Vessi link up. Now we might see other people link up. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens now that we are officially at the merge.
Yeah, so my question to you was it Xander in 41 who coined the Mergatory term, or was it Tiffany?
I'll go back and look. I thought it was Xander. I thought that's where Xander had the confessional where he was like, "This is Mergatory."
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember which it was. Anyway, let's get on to this episode, episode 6, merge episode, Survivor Season 43. Let's get right into it. Ellie voted out in this episode. I think, Ellie was certainly a roller coaster throughout this season. I think she had a good first few episodes. People thought she'd go really far in this game. And then slowly but surely, it all came crashing down, starting all the way back to when she tried to basically convince Gabler that his idol was like no good. And ever since she completely assumed that Gabler like couldn't read, her game just completely crumbled. So look, we're here now. Ellie does not make the merge. She's not on the jury. And what do you have to say about that?
Gabler is a little bit out there. He's a little bit kooky, but he is still a heart valve specialist. We shouldn't. I've always said we shouldn't diminish his intelligence, because clearly he knows what he's doing in terms of his career. Now in Survivor, that's a whole different story. But Ellie is somebody to me where this felt like the Ellie episode, where we always say we don't want to get misled by the edit, and we can kind of read it sometimes. But when a whole episode is focused on this one person, it's basically a whole arc of her saying, I feel like I'm doing better than I thought in this game, all the way to her getting voted out. It really felt like this was her arc. Again, you think about a Drew Christie episode, or you think about an episode that's all about maybe Jeremy and San Juan del Sur or whatnot, but you knew Ellie was going to get the axe here. And yeah, she started out really strong. I thought Ellie has a lot of potential. Jay mentions in the chat that she's someone who, like a Kelly Wentworth, could get considered possibly for a second chance season if they do that again for the new era. But yeah, she just came out a little too hard and a little too sloppy. Ever since she wanted to try to deceive Gabler, and then she started spilling stuff to Sammy, it all started to just spiral downhill.
Yeah. Now, before I get into my thoughts on that, I just want to remind everyone that if you're watching, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Really helped us out. But yeah, Ellie, anybody who's watching this podcast, I'm sure knows, if you were watching live, or if you were watching at any time and you saw Ellie go, I'm starting to feel like I'm getting really good at this game, that's when the red flags start to turn, the sirens start to go off, and you're like, all right, Ellie has a chance to go home tonight. I thought for a second she was maybe going to escape by and maybe she was going to be in trouble next week. And, that was just going to be the start of her crash. But yeah, she crashed pretty fast. It was just complete chaos. Once the challenge ended, I think one good thing about the hourglass being done, besides the fact that it's just a terrible twist, is the fact that you still have to earn your way into the merge. So that means that there's still 6 people, only 6 people on the chopping block, I should say, but the entire merge votes still. So because of that, because there are such limited targets, I feel like there's not an easy vote at the merge, if that makes sense. It's like you have to think more deeply. You have people on different sides who are safe, and it's across alliances and stuff like that. Some people who are safe, some people who aren't, and just makes it for a lot more complicated of a vote. And I really enjoy the fact that even though it was just an hour episode last night, we got like a good 15-20 minutes of just strategy talk and people going back and forth and back and forth. And Ellie goes and talks, she wants to get James out, and then she's telling James she wants to get Cody out. And then and then Gabler and her are fighting, and she's going back to Owen and Sammy. There was so much going on, but I love that. I love seeing the strategy. I love the fact that there were, I think it's good for the long term that there were no advantages played yet. I think that we could possibly see, something big happen there later. I didn't want Ellie to get saved. Not just because I thought she deserved to go home, but also Janine, I think, made the right move to keep her idol, because in my opinion, you can't be playing an idol for somebody before you technically hit the merge. If she had played the idol for Ellie, all it would have done is it just would have kept it. The target would have been on Janine and Ellie next week. That's all it would have done. So I think it was the right move for Janine not to play her idol for Ellie and just let her go. But yeah, I think Ellie deserved to go home. So, and it was a good job by all the people who executed that plan.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting debate because you always have people saying, is it worth having your idol or an ally? And people always say it's better to have an ally and someone you can trust over an idol, which you either can misplay or you could not play and go home with it. So I think it's an interesting debate. I see your point, though, where it's it would just further heighten Janine's threat level. And in a game where Sammy, their own former tribe, Sammy and Owen and Gabler, don't trust the girls at all. It's not like they were Baka strong. They were already looked at kind of with one eye from the guys. So all this would have done was saved Ellie for one more vote. And yeah, in Survivor, people always say you just need one more day, which could flip the tides. But I mean, it would just really make them look even more of a tight pair, which has happened to other people who have played their idols on their number one allies before. And I think you're right in a sense where I feel the hourglass is terrible. We're so glad it's gone. And as we go through the episode, when we get to the immunity challenge, we see people clap when Jeff's there's no twist. People are all right, thank God, no more hourglass. But I feel like it's a bit of a trade-off where on one hand, you're right. There's a lot of drama when half the cast is safe. And because people feel very vulnerable because you went from a 1-in-13 shot of going home to now a 6-in-13 shot of going home, basically at 50% shots, people get very vulnerable and scared, and it causes people to play more haphazardly and creates more drama. So I think that's good. On the other hand, when you have only half the cast available, there are less variables. Basically, there are less variables in terms of how many votes can go to different people because everyone's voting, but only 6 of them can give votes. So I think it's a bit of a trade-off. I still don't love Earn the Merge, but if I have to have it, it's better this way than it's been.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I'm fine with earn the merge because, as I said, I think it creates less targets and therefore it's just better for the actual vote. Do you have the numbers on the vote, I believe? Well, okay, you want to go through it quick?
Yeah, so we have 13 people at this tribal council, but if you remember, Jesse and Janine can't vote due to the risky. We never got an official name. Ship Wheel, Risky Rock. Bet your vote, whatever island. So they can't vote. So it's 11 votes total. And Ellie is voted out 7-2 to 1-1. So the 7 Ellie votes are Cassidy, Cody, Dwight, Gabler, James, Ryan, and Sammy. So Gabler and Sammy from her own tribe kind of flip on her. And then it looks like most of Coco votes together and Cody votes her out. Then the 2 votes for James are Owen and Ellie. So Ellie sticks with the plan to get rid of James, and Owen sticks with her as an ally of hers to vote out James. Cassidy votes for Noelle, and then Owen votes for Carla. So those are the vote counts.
Wait, Cassidy votes for Noelle, and then Carla votes for Owen.
Yeah, Carla votes. Carla votes for Owen. Yeah. Okay.
So I think what happened here is that it was they were just protecting in case idols were played, right? So it was or shot in the dark. So and it's crazy with the shot in the dark now. So okay, you have to assume if Ellie ends up safe from either an idol or shot in the dark, who's gonna go next? So I'm guessing that Owen put the second vote on James to make sure that he had the second most amount of votes. If for some reason he had an idol, then they threw votes towards Owen, and then a vote was thrown towards Owen. And who was the other person that got a vote? Noel.
Yeah. So no. Noel voted for Cassidy.
No, Cassidy. Right. So Noel voted for Cassidy. Right. So I would say that spare votes were probably just thrown just to prevent chaos,
So basically,
or not prevent chaos, in case of chaos, I should say.
Yeah, I think it's for an idol. I mean, you could also argue it's for the shot in the dark, but I've seen a bunch of people from 41 and 42 and 43 admit, like, yeah, half the time I forgot I even had it. It's like, it's something that people forget they even have. We've seen it be played 4 or 5 times. It's never worked once. So I think it's mainly to prevent against, okay, if someone plays an idol, or if in this case, Janine plays an idol to save Ellie, we don't want it to bounce back on us. So Owen, you're right. Owen votes with Ellie to vote against James in case of an idol play. So he's protecting himself. And the reason why Carla votes for Owen is because, well, if I can't get Ellie and Janine is safe because her half won the challenge, the next best thing to weaken Ellie would be Owen's. That's why Owen gets a vote. The only vote I can't figure out is Noel's vote for Cassidy. And I assume that's also because of the idol, and just throw us a rogue vote onto Cassidy in case, like, Janine, or in case what's it called, Ellie maybe voted for Cassidy as well. So basically everyone votes for Cassidy except for Owen and Ellie, and then Noel and Carla are just throwing votes to prevent for idols. So
yeah, I think pretty much everyone was in on the plan except
for Owen and Ellie and Janine.
Yeah. Well,
because Jesse couldn't vote, so Owen and Ellie weren't in on the plan, and Janine wasn't in on the plan, but she couldn't vote. So
I think Owen wasn't on the plan, but I think he threw an extra vote on James in case of an idol.
Possibly.
Yeah. So I think he was, because him and Sammy have been tight, right? So it wouldn't make sense for them to vote separately, in my opinion.
True. I mean, I would assume that's correct. But...
Yeah. So yeah, okay. Right. So yeah, I think Owen was in on it. I think also one thing that we have to talk about is, before we get to like the chronological order of the episode and go over each thing that happened, I think that this vote went really well for Owen and Sammy. That's assuming that Owen was in on the plan, obviously. I think that, it was the right move for them to get rid of Ellie, because Ellie was, obviously Gabler is telling Ellie that Sammy told him about the bag going through, and then Ellie's running back to them saying, Gabler, say, what do you guys do this for? And it was just like, she was causing so much chaos. It was like, all right, if any Bakas are going to move forward in the game, they need to get each other out and then move on with the rest of the game, because there was too much chaos being caused. So I think that, given the chaos that was Ellie, they could not continue with her. And they could not risk her possibly blowing up their game by sharing the information by sharing the information that they told Gabler that she went through the bag, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
I think it was the right move to get out Ellie for them.
Yeah, well. I mean, in her final words, she's like, Gabler is the reason why I'm here. And I texted you this. I was like, Gabler is part of the reason she's here, but she's also mainly here because of Sammy too. Because not only did Sammy Sammy voted her out, and he and Owen Owen voted with Ellie. But the point, though, is that Sammy obviously voted her out. And the biggest reason why Gabler didn't trust her is because Sammy ran back and told Gabler everything Ellie told him. They went through your bag? Okay, I'm going to tell Gabler. Janine has a bead idol. I'm going to go tell Gabler. So Gabler's to blame, of course, but Sammy also is a big reason why Ellie's gone. And honestly, you're right, Dylan. This tribe is a mess. We keep saying this season is like a train wreck, like Gabon, but it really comes down to these Baka people. I mean, Shannon Gus said it on Twitter the best. She goes, we've been waiting 5 weeks for the Baka implosion. It did not disappoint. They've all aired their secrets to everyone. They share secrets in front of other people. They openly fight. They vote on different sides. They come in with the most people. Then they go vote themselves out when they had 2 idols, and then they take shots at each other on the way out. It's like basically you have like the Kasaya group from Panama is like the craziest, best tribe ever. Then you have the villains, and then you have like Baka. Like Baka is a complete mess, and it made for great TV.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Also, like it, like it's Gabler just being chaotic is not the only reason why Ellie went home. Like
No.
she she did not handle Gabler well at all throughout the entire game, and it came back to bite her. So I think it's just like a message that if you go on Survivor, sometimes if you don't like somebody personally or somebody's giving you a hard time, you got to just like take a back seat. Like you just got to deal with it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And the last thing before we get through the episode chronologically, because people were asking on Twitter, well, does Gabler's, ironically back to Gabler, does his idol have power? Because technically this is the second tribal he's went to, but he wasn't eligible to go home. So does this count? Or does he still have another tribal? And Dalton Ross confirmed on Twitter his idol has no more power. Because even though he was safe from his team winning, because he still could have played it on somebody else, his idol, he basically had two tribals where it could be used. So Gabler's idol is now done, and we can then check off one idol from Owen's advantage list from earlier. So
yeah, speaking of Owen's advantage list, let's get out to how this episode started. So obviously it was the merge, but right after that we get a confessional from Owen where he basically tells us who has what advantage, and obviously it was from his perspective. He left out that Carla had an advantage because he doesn't know that yet. She has an idol. And there was one other thing. He didn't know about Cody's idol, right?
Yeah, so the producers had to add both of those in. Again, funny little fourth wall breaking, but luckily they gave us a list, so that was helpful for viewers who, again, lose track of things. But this should show, Dylan, this should show CBS you have too many advantages. If you have to show it on the screen in a list of 6, like I took a picture on my phone, Dylan, that I'll pull up on the podcast really quickly. But like, if you have to do this, like a giant list, that means it's too much. If you want to have advantages, have one idol at each beach. So you have 3, and maybe at an immunity challenge on the sit-up bench, throw like one advantage in there. That's all you need. You don't need to have 6 different things. They should really understand that this is too much.
Yeah, and speaking of that, this is going to lead me into my rant, which I have been waiting to unleash on this podcast. The next scene we see is Noelle mentioning that Cody, collected beads for a hat. He's so fun because, he wore this hat to Tribal Council, collected beads. And obviously, that's revealing to Ellie that Cody has the idol because every single beach had the same challenge. So, everybody sits here and talks about and tweets and, social media, podcasts, everyone's talking about why is everybody telling each other everything? Even if people were like keeping everything a secret, it would probably get out anyway, right? Because let's just say that one person, obviously they have the same bead challenge on all 3 beaches. Let's just say that everybody tries to keep it a secret, okay? First of all, I think that's impossible given what the challenge was. I don't think you're going to get 3 Carlas where she somehow manages to get all the beads without telling anybody about it, right? So let's just say one other person out of all 3 beaches, beside the people who found the Beware advantage, know about the beads, right? So it's the people who found it plus one other person. All it takes is for that one other person to basically hear somebody else talking about the beads. Like, for example, if that one person had heard Noelle talking, they immediately know, okay, the idol's there. And then they could go up to other people and be like, hey, did you happen to get a bead taken from you? And then immediately, Carla gave it to me. Carla took my bead. Okay, well now Carla has the idol. So I think that Survivor really screwed up by putting the same challenge on all 3 beaches because it's impossible basically to keep it a secret and everybody's going to know where the idols are. Carla, in my opinion, did a great job of keeping that a secret, yet literally all somebody has to do, and they didn't show this in the episode, but I guarantee it's out already. All somebody has to do is go up to somebody who knows what the challenge, the Beware advantage is. All they have to do is go up to somebody on blue and be like, who took your bead? Oh, Carla took my bead. She was making some art project. And then that's it. Everybody knows that Carla has the idol now. So I think that's ultimately going to happen to Carla. And the Beware advantage, yeah, of course it's called Beware for a reason. But like, just go back to the days where you could just find an idol and it's yours. Like, that would be okay, honestly. And I think it would, result in better TV when the idols actually played, because everybody knowing that everybody has an idol is not good, because the idol's not going to be played in a shocking way, probably. Like, everybody knows it's coming. So, that's my rant. I think Survivor really screwed up with that. It's going to happen in 44 also. And, we have to go back to the days that not everybody knows about everybody's idol. And that's not only on the people who are telling everybody else about their advantages. It also is on production, who is making it almost impossible for them to be a secret.
Dylan, I mean, if we're not doing Earn the Merge, if we're not doing Beware advantages, it's not dangerous and fun. It's not new school Survivor. But no, I mean, I do agree. And I think it's a really interesting debate, because we've been talking about it from a TV perspective mainly, where we've been talking about, is it fun to watch 3 different people 3 weeks in a row do the same Beware challenge with the beads? The first time it was really cool with Cody. Second time with Carla, I'm like, okay, this is cool, because, Carla's doing it by herself instead of Cody enlisting the help of Jesse and NECA. 3 times in a row, I'm like, all right, this is getting a little bit tired. And I think that's the problem people have with the new era of 41 and beyond, is that even though there are some good ideas, the problem is that when you have the same thing back to back, because Jeff's like, oh, well, the current season didn't see what happened last season, so we're going to try new things out and see how they react. In theory, that's good, but in practice, it just means that for the viewers, you're essentially having to see the same thing over and over again, and it kind of makes this new school era, or the post-COVID era, feel like each season feels like a carbon copy of each other. 3 tribes, no swaps, or in the merge, it feels like all carbon copied. So that's not good. You're bringing it up from a game perspective. You're saying, well, now this puts Carla, and does say Beware, but it puts her in a very bad spot, because all it takes is for Noelle to say to somebody else, like to James or to Cassidy, hey, there's Cody with his bead idol, not his bead idol, but his bead hat. And then they'll be like, oh, well, but Carla asked for our beads too. So I do think it provides some risk. I think Carla obviously did a great job of keeping it a secret, because she's been playing very well. I mean, you argue that she kind of got a little lucky here, where Noelle mentions it to Ellie, and Ellie runs and tells Janine and Sammy, but no one on Coco seems to know yet. So as long as it doesn't get back to them, they're good. Unless Carla does such a great job damage control, then I think she'll be fine. But I could see your point where it's like this. Carla has to hope this doesn't get back to the former Cocos, because this could put her in a bad spot unless she's able to spin it. And I think that's also one last thing, is that that's the mark of a great player, where, as we see later with Sammy, the great players, even if they come under fire, they can spin it where people still trust them. I watched Ellie's exit interview today, and she was like, even when I went back to Sammy and I was like, why is Gabler sharing these secrets? Like, how does he know about this? And clearly Sammy's like, crap, my spot's blown up. Sammy apparently kind of calmed her down in a way and spun it where she wasn't like overly mad at him, or she didn't like blame him that much. So if Carla has like a similar skill set, even if James, Cassidy, and Ryan find out about the beads, if she can handle it, she might be able to just spin it and she'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, that is possible. And yeah, I want to make it clear, because Jay is pointing out in the chat. Like, yeah, the Beware advantages, like, I think it is a fun aspect. I just think, as Jay also says here, it would have been solved if there were just 3 different tasks on each tribe, right? Because if beads were on one, then nobody on the other tribe, if they didn't have the beads, would know what that means, right? So if one person had, to do beads, another person had to say a phrase. I don't know. I'm just making. I'm not saying bring the phrase back. I'm just saying different tasks. Yeah, different tasks. But so yeah, that would solve the issue. So just want to clear that out before we move on here within the episode. But yeah, now people know that Cody has the idol. That's pretty much out there. Even though Ellie went home now, but Janine knows. And now before the challenge, so Jeff explained that, this was going to be Earn the Merge, but it was going to be without the hourglass twist, basically. So it was just 2 tribes doing a challenge. Winner is safe. Loser goes to tribal council. And you called this, so credit to you. Noelle had to pick a side because she drew the gray rock, and she had to bet on who she thought was going to, win the challenge. So I like that aspect. I always think it's cool for the person that gets, the gray rock and has to sit out to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's it's so funny because Noelle is granted, Noelle's a competitor. She's a Paralympian. She plays a lot of sports, so she is a competitor. She wants to play, but I couldn't believe she was like upset when she drew the gray rock, and the other players were like, "Oh, Noelle, I'm so sad for you." When it's like, Noelle, you don't have to compete. All you have to do is just bet on who wins. And granted, you could argue, well, her fate's not in her own hands, but it's not like it's individual immunity and she lost her shot at individual. Like, it's a team-based challenge that anybody could screw up, and she basically just gets to pick somebody and not have to compete. But no, I mean, I thought they handled it pretty well, and the tribes were pretty even. I know Noelle even said to Jeff, like, I don't know who to pick. I was going to ask you, do you think she picked the right group? I mean, okay, sorry. Armchair quarterback. She obviously picked the right group because they won, but do you think her decision to pick that group was the correct one? I think yes, because if you think about who was on what tribe, you had Dwight, Gabler, Carla, Janine, Jesse, and Ryan on one group. And then you have Ellie, Owen, Sammy, Cody, Cassidy, and James, which are pretty even groups overall, both physically and puzzle-wise. But if you think about it, her alliance on Vesey is on blue, Dwight and Jesse. So I feel like that's why she mainly went with blue, even though they were pretty evenly split. She wanted to go with her number one, Dwight, and then Jesse's kind of close with her as well. I feel like that's why she went that direction.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, right? There is definitely some strategy to picking it, despite, like, in addition to who you just think is going to win, right? So her alliance was on blue, she chose blue, right? That makes sense, I think.
But I guess you could argue, though, if she picks blue and they lose, you now have a 3-7 shot of you or your allies going home. So you might argue, well, maybe should she have picked red? Because then the only person she's there with is Cody, which is like, okay, well, if Cody goes, it's not a big problem to her. But if it's her or Dwight or Jesse, she could be in a bad spot. So I'd be curious to know if people think strategically, is it the right move to go with your alliance member in this choice, or is it better to separate yourselves because at least one of you will be safe?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't even know if I know the answer to that yet. I think maybe this needs like a bigger sample size, I would say, of like scenarios and things that play out in order for like me to make me to have like a opinion that I think is definitely correct. Like you said, you could split yourself up, and then this way at least some of you are safe and some of you aren't. Because really it's like, if you're going all in on one tribe, you could either all be safe or all be screwed. So it's like go big or go home. If that makes sense. It's like going all in.
But it would make more sense, and I'm going to think about this after the podcast. If it was a situation where the losing tribe was vulnerable, but only they could vote, like if only there were 7 votes, then it would make sense, because then you control half the votes, basically. So then it would make more sense. I'm now wondering, was it the right move? Because she should have split herself up from Dwight, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I guess everything worked out for her, so there's not much to analyze it.
And I'm just laughing because Kay Benia points out, as we get to see Blue win, that Carla hurt her hand, and Jeff was just like, let's just keep going. Carlos, you're fine.
Yeah, I was like waiting for like, I didn't think they were going to stop the challenge, obviously, but I was waiting for like her to get up the ramp and then to bring in medical while the rest of the challenge was being played out to like look at her hand, or at least after. And then like we see after, she didn't have like, I thought she was going to at least have like, not like a cast, but like at least like a wrap on it, which she didn't really have. She had it was like a bandage or something.
She had like a small bandage. Yeah.
But that looks it looks pretty painful. So yeah, shout out to Carla for powering through that challenge, and shout out to Ryan for doing some crazy stuff during that challenge.
Spider-Man. He's doing the full-fledged Spider-Man. I mean, people on Twitter were like, well, first of all, when he first did his idea, I liked it, because when he first climbs up the rope ladder, he hangs on with one arm because he's pretty strong, and then he holds his other arm down to kind of like hoist people up. But it's not really working because it's a steep ramp. So what does he do? He goes upside down and he locks his legs, and people are like, well, how does that help? I think when you lock your legs like that, like your forearms kind of get more, I guess, locked is the right term. And I feel like that's where people can like more easily climb up there, I feel like. Right.
Yeah. I don't even know. It was crazy though. It was insane. I think one thing with Ryan, if we want to talk about him quickly while we have this opportunity, honestly, okay. we're moving right into it. So honestly, it makes sense. But they go to the merge feast after the blue tribe wins. They go to the merge. feast, and everyone's talking like, oh, I don't want this person to go home. I don't want this person to go home. And then Ryan just stands up and goes, "This is the final 7 right here." And I'm like, I was like, is this? Everyone's looking like, is this serious? Like, first of all, we're not in season 3. Second of all, like, other times where this has happened on a reward, it's been like final 7 and 4 people go on and 4 people go on a reward and 3 people are left back at camp and they're like, oh, us final 4, but that's in the final 7 or final even 8 where 5 people are making an alliance or 4 people are making an alliance. This is a final 13 and he is expecting them 7 to just pick off one by one the next 6 to make for what would be the most boring season of Survivor of all time. I mean, like, what was he thinking?
I mean, Dylan, this to me was baffling, this whole segment, because you have 3 people doing insane things. And first of all, as a side note, I think one reason why Ryan did it, even though I think Ryan is just making all of us Ryans look bad, as I say each and every week. He had a good first few episodes, and then after the Lindsay episode, it's just been downhill from there. There was a secret scene where Ryan apparently is kind of like Roxroy, where he's very focused on like helping around camp, doing different tasks around camp, being strong, but kind of like isolating himself. And I think he actually, in the secret scene, like Baka, long story short, Baka had like a branch on the beach that was very like branchy and like tangled where they would dry their clothes, and Ryan, without asking, cut it down to make a wind shelter or whatever it was called. And I think he kind of got some bad looks. So I'm wondering if him asking for a final 7 was maybe like a panic move, like, oh, I'm in a bad spot at the merge. Let me see if I can kind of just get some numbers behind me. Maybe that's what it came down to. But I mean, either way, Dylan, I don't know why Ryan would think to do this whatsoever. So that was bad.
Yeah, you could like, quote unquote, hit the panic button, but like you have to do it in a different way, right? It's
of course, absolutely.
It's like it's like you can't like say that's like people who are like across like 20 different alliances all at once, right? That was crazy. So
yeah, so that was bad. Then you have, like you just said, people sharing who they want to keep safe, which it blows my mind that people in a group, like when you just merge, you have just met these people less than a day ago, that you admit to them who you don't want to go home in a group of 7 at the merge, when secret alliances are better than public alliances. Like, it's, again, like you said, it's one thing if you are talking at the water well and it's like Ellie, Cody, and James, and they say to like each other, okay, let's build a circle of trust. I'm good with this person. I'm good. Like, if you say it in a smaller setting, that's good, because you always want people to be your advocate. You want people to, if you're not in a conversation, like, or if you're off on Shipwheel Island, you want people to vouch for you, so that way you're not out of the loop. Because the worst thing you can have is where you're out of the loop and people are like, well, can we just get rid of Dylan? Yeah, that's fine. Let's just get rid of Dylan. Because you never want people, I think Adam once said, you never want people to think about what the game is like without you there. And I think that's why you want advocates in this game. But the fact that you would publicly share, okay, I want to keep Cody safe tonight. Oh, I would prefer if Ellie is safe. Like, what are they doing in this moment? And then the Gabler moment with the bag search was just the icing on top of this crazy feast.
Yeah. And then to quote Gabler, he says, let me, you know what, now we're gonna have to bring up the clip, because I think it was it was an iconic clip. Gabler says in a confessional, and I'll bring it up right here. Let's get it up here.
By throwing out Ellie's name, I was trying to throw out Ellie's name.
Genius.
By throwing out Ellie's name, I was trying to throw out Ellie's name.
Survivor know-it-all right there. Cheers.
So yeah, that was a crazy moment. I think Gabler, like, I don't necessarily think he did like a terrible job at the end, I guess, because he got what he wanted, but like nobody trusts him now. Everyone knows he's whack. Like, he's Gabler. That's who he is. He's going to be a complete wild card every single week. I think that in a big merge scenario like this, where a lot of things can go a lot of different ways, I don't know what the motivation is to keep Gabler around if you're anybody.
It's so tough It's so tough because, and Gabler technically isn't wrong. I mean, they did go through his bag. They did plot against him to take him out with his own idol if he didn't know the rules. Like, he's not incorrect. The problem, you good?
Do I have a call coming in? I'm on do not. This is ridiculous. I'm on do not disturb, and I have a call coming in, right? So I guess do not.
Is it Gabler? Is it Mike
It
Gabler?
it is not Gabler calling, and do not disturb, I guess, doesn't work. So that's annoying.
Okay.
But anyway, back to what you were saying.
But all I was just saying was it's tough because he's not incorrect. The girls did search his bag. They were plotting against him, but it was just the complete wrong situation because you piss off Ellie, and he's lucky that Ellie's not on the jury, but you piss off Ellie, you piss off Janine, Owen and Sammy don't want to trust you really going forward, and everyone else that's at the feast is like, well, Gabler said that about someone from his tribe that he knew for the first 11 days. What is he going to say about me if I don't pick him for reward? Or
Yeah,
what?
right.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I was going to say, we're having a lot of people in the comments say, well, you could keep Gabler around because no one's voting for him at the end. Yes, that's true. But here's a different thing. Here's the thing in Survivor. You have to weigh, is it more risky to, like, is the risk worth the reward, right? So by keeping Gabler in, you're risking a complete wild card. You're risking somebody who could blow up your game by saying one different thing. Obviously the reward is high, right? The reward is you go to tribal council with Gabler and you're guaranteed that he's not getting any votes, probably, right?
Mm-hmm.
More votes to you. But at the same time, it's like, why? Like, how stressful is that? Do I want to stress about Gabler being crazy and saying the wrong thing to somebody else for 12 more votes or 10 more votes or whatever it is throughout the game? Like, to me, it's like, I would probably just get him out. You know, I think this is what the move is. I think if you're like a Sammy and an Owen and you have Gabler in your back pocket, I think the right move is to like try to get him through a few more votes so you have him another number. And then like I think you cut him at like final 9-ish because technically he's in your alliance, right? He could give you a number, but also like you don't want to be in a good spot and him to just like be like, I'm Gabler and I need to make a big move. I didn't come out here to just stay with the same people and be dragged around. And there's all of a sudden he's just voting another way for no reason. I think that's the big risk, right? Somebody like that could sink your game. Like, I don't know if you want to keep that around, even though like people in the comments are voting out, he could be a GOAT option.
I think it's a good discussion to have because he's somebody who is most likely not getting any votes at the end. I mean, he's somebody who you probably can pencil in as one of the only people in this game that's left that's drawing dead. You could argue Ryan's getting pretty close, but he's the only one where I could say I don't think Gabler is going to win this game. So yes, bring him to the end. You secure a GOAT, you can be in the final vote. Problem is, like you said, rational players want to play with rational players. So if you have somebody on the game board that you can't control that could sink your game on a whim, that's very dangerous. That's number one. Number two, I mean, this is what happened with Sari in Panama. You take out someone like Courtney where it's like, if everyone wants to bring Gabler to the end, like if Sammy wants to bring him, Noelle wants to bring him, Owen wants to bring him, that takes away one of your spots. That takes away a seat that could be for you. So I think it's a very tough debate whether you think Gabler is someone you want to bring to the end, or like you say, he's in my back pocket. Like Sammy and Owen have no reason to get out Gabler now because he is so loyal to them after Sammy has fed him all of this information on the girls. If you want, keep Gabler for the next several votes until final 4, final 5. Maybe at that point, if you feel like, you know what, he's just going to take up one of my spots, I have to cut. Like if Sammy says, okay, I'm a physical threat at the final 5, people are going to gun for me. They want to bring Gabler to the end. If I win immunity tonight, maybe I should get out Gabler so I can still secure a spot in there. So I think it's a really interesting debate whether you bring someone who's a GOAT for sure, or is somebody a GOAT but they're so chaotic that they could really sink your game.
Yeah, I think it is an interesting debate. But to go through some other stuff that happened, it was like Ellie was all over the place, right? It was like you just came on the beach with these people. You don't know most of them. And yet you are going around and giving out decoy targets, right? So like to me, it's like sometimes you just have to lay low and panic less, even though it's hard, right? It's like you got to just let the numbers go where they may and then figure out a way to make a move. It's like once she started throwing out Cody's name and James's name, and like they kind of figured it out, it was like it was over for her, right? Also, I know a lot of people, and rightfully so, are giving a ton of credit for James, who kind of just saw through Ellie the entire time, right?
Yeah.
And that's really impressive, right? He had never he did not interact with Ellie before this moment, basically, right? And he is able to read a lie right away. James is really, really good. Like he is really, really good. Him and Carla are going to do a lot of damage at this merge, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, I mean, James is somebody who I think is playing a more quiet game, and somebody who, at least to the cameras, because sometimes they don't portray who's doing the most out there. But I mean, they are showing James to be a bit more under the radar than Carla is, where Carla seems to be the one that's making more of the moves. But it really does feel like it's an equal partnership. I mean, I would say James and Carla are definitely some top contenders in this game. You could argue from early on, Jesse might still be like a candidate, and maybe even Sammy. And I mean, Cassidy's in the mix. So there's a bunch of people that could still win this game. Owen obviously is still an early favorite for people, but James and Carla are doing the most. And again, I think it just comes down to how it's shown, because on the show, James is more soft-spoken. He's more kind of observant in terms of like, okay, Ellie, I just don't trust her for some reason, and he trusts his gut and he's correct. But I think Ellie has said in the game and also in post-game interviews, like the reason why they were targeting James is because they perceived James to be kind of like the leader of Coco, or they thought James was in the best spot of Coco. So I just think it's interesting how it's portrayed for them.
I think I think that based on what we saw in 41 and 42, you could make an argument that James and Cassidy are potentially in the best position out of anybody in the game right now. And I know they got votes, right? But when I say that, it's like, all right, in Survivor 41 and 42, right? You look at what happens in 41, right? So it looked like, Shannon, ultimately Erica, who won, she was always voted the right way. She was always in on what was happening, but she was never the person that was seen as in charge. Okay. And then eventually the big dogs that everybody thought were going to win get picked off. And all of a sudden she emerges sitting next to the right people at Tribal Council. Last season, Marianne and Omer were in the correct alliance. Omer was running the show. The only person that really knew Omer was running the show, at least basically no one knew it for a while, right? And then Marianne, who had been on the Orange Tribe with him from the start, she'd been working with him. She realized this was my opportunity to get out Omer. She struck at the right time, and all of a sudden, she's in the perfect spot. She ends up winning the game. I'm wondering, especially with the news that's going to come out soon, I would think, of Carla's idol. I'm wondering if Carla could potentially be the Omer of this season, and either James or Cassidy could be the one that ends up getting to the end out of it. Now, obviously, they still have to beat whoever's sitting next to them, but is it the right place to be the person who is making the moves but not seen as making the moves? Like, I think it's the right move, I mean, this has always been correct for Survivor in some way. I'm just comparing it to the last two seasons. It's like you want to be the person who is making the moves, but not seen as making the moves, right? And I think that's where James and Cassidy are right now. I think we know for sure James, Cassidy to a lesser extent, but Cassidy I think is definitely skied up for me in terms of like potential, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, 41 and 42 have told us that we really can't read the edit anymore. Like, we have no idea what's going to happen, and you could make the assumption that the same thing is going to happen, that somebody who is not more of a front runner, like a James or a Cassidy, when you compare them to like a Carla, they could win. Now, again, that just could be editing as well. Like, I mean, for all we know, Carla could keep it under wraps. Carla could kind of keep it like she could be like the new school Kim Spradlin. And I'm not comparing Carla to Kim yet. That obviously is way too soon, with Kim being one of the greatest players ever. But like, some people have the ability to just be in control without people realizing it and just still riding it to the end and winning. Like, that could still happen in the new era. It just comes down to, does your game get exposed, and do you basically get people to turn against you? Because if it gets to the final 6 or final 7 and Carla's outed as like the biggest threat, but James and Cassidy are so loyal that they will not turn on her, it doesn't matter. She's going to win. It comes down to, do you manage your threat level where people around you still want to bring you to the end as well? And I think Carla still could win. And I think that even though people are saying, well, oh, well, Erica won and Marianne won, so, it's not the greatest players of their seasons, but I still feel like you can get a really great winner that was more in the forefront. And keep in mind as well, this group did not see Marianne win, but they saw Erica win. So in their minds, the most recent winner of the game was somebody who was more in the shadows and then emerged at the very end. So I guarantee you this group is not discounting this group is not discounting anyone left except for Gabler maybe. But
yeah, and like, people are saying like, you don't really know what the editors are saying. We could not have, if you told us at this point in 41 when there were 12 people left, Erica's winning the season, we would have died laughing on this podcast. We would have said, are you kidding me? We barely even know who Erica is, and she's going to win this season. If you told me at this point last season, when there were 12 people left, that Marianne was going to win, I would have said to you, Marianne is getting the edit of somebody who's a great character and has no strategic game whatsoever. And the next thing you know, she comes on and becomes a huge strategist later in the game, makes the biggest move, and perfectly plays the final 7 and wins the game, right? So I think, it's so hard. I will say that, what? I'll say this. I'll say it's impossible to read the season-long edit these days.
Yep.
The only thing that is guaranteed with the edit is that when you say you are good at Survivor and getting good at it and feel like you're confident, goodbye. That's the only thing that's consistent. Ellie, we knew she was going home from the edit. The rest has been pretty unpredictable in the last few seasons.
I almost feel bad for Ellie because I feel like she's more self-aware than that. I feel like the producers probably were like, so how do you feel in this game? Do you feel good? Do you feel like you're doing better? Like they could not pay me enough to give them a soundbite where it's like, I'm running this game. I'm in a great spot. I'm the head honcho. You could not pay me enough. Basically, if they ever said to me in confessional, okay, Ryan, how are you feeling in this game? How are you doing? I'm going to say, I'm doing fine. I'm doing decent. I feel like I feel good. I'm okay. I am not going to give them any inclination that I'm in a great spot. I'm running things. No way. Because all it takes is for you to have an episode and they're just going to ham it up. And then people like us on the podcast are going to go, look at that idiot who thought he was running the game and he got voted out. So, I mean, yeah. And also the last thing I'll say about, the edit and possibly winners before we get to like the last thing in the episode quickly, before we get to questions is, I think the problem with Erica in 41 is that I just think it was not a good edited season. Whether or not you like the cast or not, people are very split on 41. A lot more people like 42 so far. And I think people are still liking 43 a good amount. I just think they did not edit that cast right where it was. And I think, Dylan, because the problem was the Green Tribe, UA, just kept losing. So we got the whole Shannon Ricard show. Then obviously we got a good amount of Xander as the audience favorite in some ways, right? I mean, you had like Deshaun and Danny and whatnot. Heather and Erica, and you could argue the Seer got some screen time, but Heather and Erica got very little screen time, and even Danny did not get screen time until the last few episodes. So they just did not showcase those people enough. If they showed Erica more, people would be less upset. And I think Marianne, they did a better job showing her game, even though she was more of a character. They showed more and more of her game, and then it made sense. I think in this season, Dylan, I would argue, despite this cast being more chaotic and less strategic, I would argue we know each of these players extremely well. I mean, I think I could tell you a good amount about each of them, maybe the least about Cassidy or maybe the least about Dwight. But I could think about moments in the game, and I could think about what they've done in the game or how Cassidy handled the vote, how Dwight handled the vote. I think this cast is more even-keeled, so that way if one of them won, except Gabler, I feel like I could at least get to that point better.
I do.
That makes sense.
I do feel like I know a lot about everybody on the cast right now, so I think we're in a good spot. Anything else you want to go over before we get to questions?
Yeah, the last thing I want to mention is we kind of referenced it earlier, but just the confrontation between Gabler and Ellie was so funny because they clearly at this point cannot trust each other. Gone are the days where they were bonding over metal music. Like at this point, they are going to go for each other. Gabler's going to vote for Ellie no matter what. And I have to give Sammy credit here because Ellie goes to Sammy and Owen, and Sammy's like, well, I'm so pissed at Gabler for running his mouth, and I can't trust him at all because now my games could be in jeopardy because people could think I'm playing the middle. But Sammy's smart enough to realize, you know what? I really can't trust Ellie going forward considering how shifty she was on Baka. And if she's already a little bit sus that Gabler found this out, what is she going to think about my game down the road? And she might look at me as we get towards the end game. So maybe Ellie should go home tonight. So I have to give Sammy some credit here as well. I mean, obviously we've been singing Carla and James praises, and I love Carla and James, and Jesse's been good early on, but Sammy as well has been pretty good as well.
Shout out Sammy, who I think is doing a really good job.
He's gonna get the gritty.
The classic Russell Hant strategy, which is it once and I think that's what Russell Hant did so well, right? It's like once a player even like threw out his name, goodbye, right? It's like as soon as like somebody caught on to what Russell was doing, he would vote them out right away. And this is like Sammy was like, well, wait, Ellie has dirt on me now. Now she has to go so that other people don't find out that, right?
I mean, that's happened a couple times this season. That happened when that happened in episode 2 when Justine was like, Jesse, can I trust you? And Jesse, I'm not sure if I can trust you. Jesse's like, nope, shut it down.
Right.
Shut it down.
Correct.
So you're right. I mean, the minute your name is mentioned, it's like, even if you don't go for them that night, and even if you're like, okay, well, they can help me in the short term, you're never going to forget that. And it will like, and also, again, I referenced it. I said, it happened with Jesse and Justine. And I said this on a podcast when you weren't here. I said, this happened in Winners at War. The minute Danny Boatwright was like, I don't know if I can trust Boston Rob. Like the minute you do that, no matter, they will never fully trust you again. So it's a dangerous spot.
Right. I agree with that. But let's get to some questions here. Let's see if we got anything in the chat. Scrolling through.
Oh, while you're looking for questions, Kavania has a funny comment here that I've been seeing where, not this exact comment, but somebody's like, Sammy sounds like a robot. Sammy just always has the same pose in confessionals. Have you seen Sammy in confessionals? He's always like this. He's doing like the Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. He always has his hands like this, and he's always leaning. So Sammy is always leaning, and he's always like this in confessionals. Always.
Yeah, that is pretty. I'm a big fan of Sammy. I think he's great. Even if you like, I don't know if he ends up winning. I mean, he could. But like, he's a great character in addition to, I think, a very smart player. So I'm happy to see it.
The comment that I pulled up while we're looking for questions was from Jay. Now, I wouldn't like this, but at least it would make more sense. Maybe the reason why they wanted to have these beadware advantages all the same is that if someone has knowledge as power, that makes it pretty easy to do. And now, granted, I'm not going to accuse CBS of wanting their twist to work, but I'm not saying that they want their twist to work, because after Liana strikes out with it, Drea strikes out with it. Both times it's like, hey, do you have an idol? No. They want it to work. So if you have beadware advantages, and let's just say Janine had the knowledge as power, or who had it but went home with it?
Gio.
Who had it? Gio. Like if Gio found out about Cody's idol, that they want him to say, Cody, I know you have it because Noelle revealed that's why you were grabbing beads. So it's like, this makes sense to me, this theory.
I agree with that. And that's actually a great point that I didn't think of. But yeah, that could easily be the case. Now we have a question from Christian here who says, just curious, there's only 4 women remaining. That would be in the final 12 here. Do you think the females have been too aggressive with gameplay this early? Do I think that the women have been too aggressive with gameplay this early, which is why that there's only 4 left? I don't know if that's the reason. I don't think that there are 4 women left because they have either been too, like, I just think that sometimes like the game plays out how it plays out, right? Like if you think about how each person went home, it was like, all right, the first out was Mariah, right? It was the first vote of the season. She got voted out because they wanted to stay strong in challenges. and they thought that she was the weakest member, and then they ended up going on to win every single challenge from there on out. So I guess you could say they quote unquote made the right move if that was what they wanted, right? And then the next one was Justine out, and we exactly pointed out why she went home. It was like she wasn't necessarily too aggressive. She just made a bad move and told Jesse she was a good liar. Like a bunch of weird stuff. She got voted out. Ellie was all over the place. I wouldn't exactly call her aggressive. She was more overconfident. So again, I think it comes down to just the individual players and the self-interests of the individual tribes. I don't necessarily think that they were voted out because they were too aggressive. I think it was just the way that this game happened to play out this season.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say they were aggressive. I think you're right. It's a case by case basis. Like Lindsay's, you could chalk up to her getting a little paranoid. Ellie's, you could chalk it up to being a little overconfident. NECA, they just wanted to stay stronger in challenges. The Mariah one still gets me because they wanted to stay strong in challenges and they did win. But Mariah wasn't the reason they lost that challenge, and Janine actually struggled more than Mariah did. So it's like, I don't think we can say that. I just think it comes down to case by case basis. And unfortunately, I think people are saying in a season where you have tribes of 6, or 3 tribes, I think because of the let's keep strong mentality, you might unfortunately lead to more females getting voted out. Whereas if you have tribes of 9 or 10, like 2 tribes, it's a lot easier to hide. It's a lot easier to kind of save yourself in that way. When it's 6 people and you make even one mistake, especially on day 1 or like before the first challenge, like it's really bad luck. So it's tough. I mean, yeah. I would need to go back and look at the stats. I can't remember the last time. Maybe it was in Panama. Maybe it was in Gabon. I would need to look back at the last time we've had the first 5 of 6 people have been females. I would need to go back and look at that. That's pretty crazy. We have 4 women left.
Right. All right. I believe this is the last question. We have 2 the same here. So I'll throw up Jay's question here. He says, quote, do you think that the advantage in the preview for the next episode is the knowledge is power?
Oh God.
Here's what I have to say to that. If somehow next week we end up with the knowledge is power being put back into play after being eliminated, it's like this. Then it would be like the CBS producers are literally sitting there with like a button, knowledge is power, knowledge is power, knowledge is power, and they just like they want it to work so bad. Like, give us something different. Nobody likes this advantage. It might not ever work. And if it does work, all right, somebody's gonna unfairly get their advantage taken. And when I say unfairly, I don't think it's a good advantage. So that's what I mean unfairly. So look, I hope it's not that. I don't know what it could be. I don't even want to. I'm going to say that it's probably not an idol. They're not going to put another idol into play. So maybe it's another steal a vote, or maybe it's maybe it is a knowledge. I really hope it's not a knowledge power. That's all I have to say.
I'll be honest. Either I haven't been watching or I haven't been paying attention, but I feel like this season, I just don't remember what the previews are anymore. So I actually completely forgot that we may have an advantage next episode. If they're hyping it up, it could be knowledge is power again, but
I have an idea of what it could be. I'm going to give this as my official prediction. Okay. I'm going to say that it's not a knowledge is power because I don't think they're going to force that on again. I think it's going to be. I think that what is something that you have to think about this year? What is something that is not a stealing advantage, but could counteract an advantage, and that's an idol nullifier, right? I could easily. I could see with 4 or 3 idols being in the game, whatever it is. I guess it's 3 idols now because Gabler's is gone. I could see it being like an idol nullifier or like a vote nullifier, right? Like you could like pick somebody not to vote.
That's fine. I mean, if you have to tell me to pick between an idol nullifier and a knowledge is power, I'm going to be besides myself because one tells people you cannot lie in the game of Survivor, and the other one takes the idea of if you have immunity, you can't go home, and throws that out the window. So I hate both. If I had to pick one, I would pick the nullifier because I think knowledge is power is stupid that you're not allowed to lie in the game of Survivor. So
I mean, idol nullifier, you still have to play it right? So
yeah, so I hope it's neither. I will be pessimistic and I will say it's the knowledge is power. But if it's a steal a vote, it's an extra vote. If it's like you said that we saw in Triple H, it's a advantage where you can block somebody from voting like Devin. That's fine too. Any one of those, I'm okay. Or you want to do like an advantage menu? Fine, do that. Just don't give me a nullifier and don't give me a knowledge is power. That's all I want. Because the season's been good so far. And you want to know why the season has been getting better? We started out a little slow because we had a lot of backstories and we had some, a lot of advantages. It's, again, I don't know why CBS can't figure this out. The best episodes in the new era are the ones that have no advantages or less advantages mentioned, no backstories, no flashbacks. It's just classic Survivor, and it's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that the best 2 episodes of the season have been this episode and the Lindsay blindside. Those have been the best 2 of the season. So if you throw in these advantages, you're just going to make it worse. So just don't do it.
yeah, no, I do agree with you, but I think that is all we. Whatever happened to tokens?
Listen,
poof gone.
Jeff Probst went to Mike White and said, "Hey, Mike White, you told me that Redemption Island wasn't fun anymore, and we got rid of it. Should we do tokens again?" And Mike White was like, "But is it fun? Survivor should be fun." And Jeff's like, "Yes, no more tokens. We need to do 26 days and earn the merge and hourglasses." So the reason why we don't have the tokens is due to Mike White's, basically.
Yep. I think that's all we got for tonight, but I believe, and once again, just want to thank everyone for watching live. If you're watching, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. Really helps us out. Follow us on all socials. And yeah, I think that's all. We'll probably be back on Thursday next week again. We'll keep you guys posted about that. And yeah, that's all we got.
All right, we have survived Mergatory, and we are at the merge. So now that, Dylan, we are at the final 12, we had nothing else for you. So grab your torches and head back to camp.
Good night.